Okay, the backstory. A few days ago, Max was over at my house, and we were on the back porch having some cigars, and he mentioned how he still hasn't seen Army of Darkness, which I cannot believe since he's a huge Sam Raimi fan. And so I'm like, well, I've got this old DLP that's just sitting here in the back porch, and turns out it still works. So we grabbed the Xbox One, hooked it up, and we watched Army of Darkness, and of course he loved it. So I was going to Trek Bicycles a few days later to buy some cables for Mastervision 3, and I was like, oh, I should go get a Fire Stick for this old DLP TV because it has HDMI. But before I got to Best Buy, I saw the Goodwill, the same Goodwill where I found my Sony Mavic camera. So I'm like, oh, I should go in there and see what I can find. And I found a streaming Blu-ray player for $8, so it can do like YouTube and stuff. But then I found something even cooler. It was kind of expensive for Goodwill, but I had to buy it. All right, here it is. It's a very old Erector Set. I don't know how many of you remember Erector Sets. Those of you who do will be completely unshocked to know that I had one when I was a kid. Yeah, this was like in the display case, which is where they usually have the high value items, you know, like $20. And the box is pretty beat up, but it still has the box. I don't know. This probably came from like an estate sale or something. I was trying to figure out its vintage. And by that I mean, you know, when it was made. Because you're not supposed to just say, oh, it's vintage. You would say, oh, this is vintage 1960s or vintage 1943. And based off the typography and the way the art was done, I'm going to say this is no newer than the mid-60s, and it could possibly be late 50s. Like, looks like this caution sticker was added after the fact. The box is protruding a little bit, which is not a good sign. That means whatever's in here was put in haphazardly and without care. I think originally oh man, it's been forever. Well, I didn't even put together my first Erector Set. My first Erector Set, I think it was the first Christmas after my dad died, and my Uncle Bud, who had been friends with my dad, and that's actually how he met my mom, he bought me an Erector Set for Christmas, and he stayed up the night before building one of the projects from it, so... No, there's one of the nuts. So that when I woke up, not only would I have an Erector Set, but something was already built that I could play with. It was like a remote control car. Okay. A bit more haphazard than I would have liked. This looks like, oh, it's a DC motor gearbox. All right. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's like a fake communicator box. Oh, I hope there's not batteries inside of it. Gilbert Erector, your model building guide. You can build all the models pictured, but these are meant to just be starting suggestions. You'll soon be making improvements and variation, even constructing entirely new models of your own design. With Erector, your imagination is the only limit. Also, whatever's in the box. That's what makes Erector the most versatile construction set ever invented. Oh yeah, I remember all these, like, oh, here's how you make an elevator, and here's how you make a seesaw and a crane, and, you know, there's a lot of, you know, basic, you know, mechanical engineering concepts explored here. You know, flimsy, but, oh yeah, look, there's an elevated crane. You know, nowadays, if you had those like in Brooklyn, they'd be turned into a brewery, because everything from our past is just turned into a brewery. Oh, there's like a little robot. That's funny. Oh, maybe this is the detailed instructions. Oh, look at this. This is so cool. Oh, there we go. 1964. So I was pretty bang on. Early 60s. Well, actually, I'm going to put the books aside from now. Oh, look. That's weird. This doesn't really match the rest of the documentation. Okay, that looks like a bunch of bolts in a very old bread bag. Oh, this is like the ultimate boomer toy. I'm a little disconcerted about the weight of this. I hope it's just like a transformer or something. Oh my gosh. Oh, never mind. Here's the transformer. Why are there two reverse? Oh, this is meant to bolt right onto the device. Now, these are actually in pretty good condition. The enamel on both sides is intact. Yeah, these are a bit beat up. Oh, look, there's a crane hook with a block and tackle pulley on it. Yeah, this one's only 20 years older than the one I had when I was a kid. Now, I know the internet has no concept of what a boomer actually is anymore, but this would have been a baby boomer, like a baby boomer's toy back in the 60s. Here, millennials, let me explain it to you. After World War II, which you probably don't learn about in school anymore, all the GIs came home and they were like, oh man, I'm so glad to not be in a war anymore. Let's make some babies, honey. So there was a boom of babies. Baby boom, which means in order to be a boomer, you have to have been born in the decade following World War II. So my parents obviously were baby boomers. Actually, my dad was born during World War II. This looks like the same thing, like there's two of them. Yeah, it is, except for one's in a clear case. Did the box indicate that there were two? No, so I think this is not a discrete kit, so to speak. How could anyone not want to organize all of their Erector Set pieces by group and size? I mean, I know I want to. Oh man, I could build all sorts of robots with this. I do realize, of course, I am going to build something with this. I mean, let's be honest here. Okay, I believe that's all the. Oh wait, no, there's one. Oh wait, no, that has a bolt in it. Okay, so that's all of these. I think I just realized why the nuts are all square. It's so you can hold them in your fingers without having to use a wrench. Would it really have killed someone at the estate sale to organize this properly? Some wax paper, looks like something from like an old MRE. Let's get this wax paper out onto a tray. Nice. It's like a power transfer chain. Almost kind of like a bicycle. It's not very long. I wonder what you would do with it. I guess you could... Actually, that kind of reminds me of how I want to do the next mask revision. Ancient rubber band. Oh wait, yeah. You've got this bag of goodies. Might as well dump it out. Inside. Oh man, this has been in the bag for a very long time. I mean, again, this is definitely a 60s typography. And the bread was only 39 cents, although that's not much cheaper than it is at Quick Trip nowadays. But of course, actually 39 cents back in the 60s was way more than 99-cent bread now. I mean, that would have been like... I'm not exactly sure what these are supposed to be. It's definitely 60s plastic. Oh, this one's different. That's clearly a 632. You know, these nuts are... Yeah, most of these... That's weird. Yeah, there's a 632 in here, but most of these are 832s. These rubber bands are strangely in fairly intact condition. Maybe Techmoan could get me some belts. Oh, I'm Techmoan. Oh, I'm British. I get British points on YouTube for having an accent. You know, the funny thing about this is the most valuable thing is the box. Since I'm the world's worst son, I actually didn't help my mom move. You know, that's what my little brother and my brother-in-law can do. They can help her move. But anyway, this is one closet and this box of junk, and I'm pretty sure that's where I threw all the boxes for my Nintendo games when I was a kid. So she probably threw away like $1 million in Nintendo boxes. Yeah, there's a lot of linkages here. That's pretty cool. I guess it must have come with all these rods, which look like they're all... well, they're not 1/8 inch. They're whatever. Oh, they're probably... Oh yeah, see, it's the same thickness as the 832 screw. So the box advertised crane pieces that were 1 foot long, and I believe they're talking about this. Although, is this actually 1 foot long? Maybe? Seems a bit short. But there's only one of them, so clearly this kit is incomplete. So this was the complete total of, you know, main bars and linkages that I found. Let's take a look at one of these gearboxes. It looks like it has a pretty standard DC motor in it, and it has, I don't know if you can see it in there, but there's a worm gear on it. Pretty decent gear reduction going on. So these are just the gear axles, and then it looks like what they've done is they've actually attached the motor output to these two screws here. And then here's the same thing. It's just in clear. I don't know if you can see it a little. Oh yeah, you can see it better. So you've got your DC motor. It's a worm gear, which already is going to give you a pretty good torque increase or speed reduction. And that drives that, which drives that, which drives this, which I assume, I'm not sure how that engages without that. I wonder if they attach things here. So maybe this isn't necessarily the output shaft. Maybe, oh yeah, because look, there's a notch there. What's this? Oh, it's a gearbox. Oh, that's interesting. Oh yeah, I bet this, yeah, see how they've got it in, it's in neutral right now. And then you can, looks like, oh yeah, you can engage that pulley, or I'm assuming you can also go this way. Don't break, don't break, don't break. Yeah, there we go. Right. Oh no. Darn it, I was hoping to not find batteries. 25 cents, that's a heck of a deal. Okay, that one was starting to go. Still, could have been worse. You could use this instead of using the wall power. Oh, I bet you squeeze it and then you put the wire right in there. Well, these batteries are kind of cool. This is what batteries looked like when I was like a little tiny kid. Radiovac, that used to be made, or the company, oh yeah, Madison, Wisconsin. Well, I mean, there's no reason I couldn't put D batteries in this and fire it back up. Ugh, this wire is gross. I think this is gonna go in the garbage. This wire, who cares? No, that's the wire that carried the first message from Alexander Graham Bell. Help, I've spilled acid on myself. What should I build? I could build anything. That fits, but it's awfully close to the other shafts. But there is a set screw, which makes me think that is how it's supposed to go. I'd assume this linear chainmail probably got destroyed over the years. Oh no, there is a, look, there is a linkage on the end. Can you see that? So, let's see here. Linear chainmail. Yes, only here do you hear such phrases. Well, actually, it's probably easier to link up the linear chainmail and then put it on. See? Look at that. Oh, it's like snow tires. Or snow chains, right? Tonight on Ice Road Chuckers, they try to go up Death Hill without chains on. Then you hear like, you know that sound effect that you always hear on reality TV? Here, I'll play it right here. So that's like the bad sound effect. It's called bowed oil cans. And then the other one you always hear, it's usually when there's a reveal. Or so if this was on Pawn Stars, it would be like, the expert would come in and they'd be like, the most valuable kits are from the 1950s. And this kit is from, then you hear the sound, the 1960s. My father started this restaurant back in the 1960s, and it was doing really well. Then he retired, and I took over, because obviously business acumen is hereditary. Then I destroyed everything, and the restaurant is a shell of what it once was. I hope Gordon Ramsay can help me. I hired all 18 of my cousins to work here, along with my wife, because it's really easy to work at a place when you can't fire people. Oh! I seem to recall the wrench on my Erector Set being a lot nicer than this one. Oh, look at this. Life hack! Look, I found some Radiovac batteries that aren't 60 years old. I was able to get one of these motors working. The blue one appeared to have some sort of damage inside the motor itself. It was shorting out my power supply, so I think it's screwed, but this one works. I put some new size 4 screws on it. A 5-year-old boomer put this together in a cave with a box of scraps. All you zoomers out there, you think you're so cool and you don't like the boomers? This is what the boomers were playing with when they were kids. They were playing with engineering. And it doesn't work. I sanded off the copper oxide and also cleaned it using my rubbing alcohol stash. It's just so weird. They would never have something made of just copper nowadays. It would be bronze or some alloy. There we go. Now we just need to do that to the Statue of Liberty. Make the Statue of Liberty copper again. You know what? This red platform is holding me back. I'm gonna get rid of it. Maybe I should build an elevator instead. Reminds me of a joke when we were kids. What's Darth Vader's wife name? Elevator. Ha 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 ha. But then we found out it was Padme. Is Padme all right? Is she safe? Lord Vader, it turns out in your anger, you totally killed her. What? No, she was alive. You know what they should have done is they should have somehow, like, Obi-Wan should have been responsible for her death, like an accidental death, right? That would have made more sense. Or Obi-Wan moves in on his girl. Obi-Wan, you are the only one I can trust. And then Obi-Wan would be like, give me some sugar, baby. Because then, like, the confrontation at the end where they're on that fire planet and Anakin sees Obi-Wan on Padme's ship, that would have made more sense. He was there for me, he was there for me, Obi-Wan. Whose idea was it? I guess it was George Lucas. Like, Padme, in this movie, I want you to talk like you have Novocaine in your nervous system. You want me to talk like I'm at the dentist? Yes. I want you to talk like you're at the dentist. How about this voice? Oh, that's perfect. You know, I'm not a prequel apologist by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, it's astounding how George Lucas was able to get such flaccid performances out of everyone. Like, like back in the 90s, you know, like Natalie Portman's like kind of the up-and-coming girl. You know, she was like in The Professional. She was in Mars Attacks as the president's daughter. What was the other movie she was in? Beautiful Girls? Or, yeah, with, I think Uma Thurman was in that. You know, so, and, you know, she was kind of like, what do they call it? The manic pixie girl. She was like the proto one. Well, her and Kristen Dunst were the prototypes. But anyway, you know, she's a really good actress, and she's just lame in Star Wars. However, that said, you know, the movies are like, they're kind of like not very well directed, right? But from a story standpoint, they're actually pretty solid. So the way I like to put it is, the prequels were a good story, poorly told. And the J.J. Abrams movies were a bad story, well told. You know, you see all this action and movement, and, you know, it's well directed, and, you know, Abrams is really good at, like, you know, getting good performances out of actors. There's lots of energy to it. But the story is junk. I mean, the same thing with Star Trek 2009. The cast is great, the performances are great, it's got a lot of energy, the story is awful. I should probably add a brace here. So I think this is going to be an elevator? Kind of like my Darth Vader joke. Keep seeing these rumors about George Lucas returning to Lucasfilm, and I guess that did happen. You should buy a bunch of copies of Hero with 1,000 Faces and go back into work, and then plop the book down on everyone's desk and be like, read this and I expect the book report next week. Because that's really what's kind of missing from a lot of modern movies is I don't necessarily think it's because of nihilism, although it could be, but, you know, they don't follow like the classical structure, and the classical structure works because it works. The thing that makes it work is it's all that stuff. Hero's journey it's all a metaphor for life, right? So no matter who we are, where we come from, you know, the one thing we all have in common is we all are born and then we die, right? And that's kind of, you know, that's what I got from Hero 1,000 Faces, is that commonality. You know, if you express it in, you know, kind of like the tokens of, you know, hero's journey, it speaks to people universally because, you know, it's not, you know, you're not necessarily like, oh, I met a goddess, or, you know, I've gone into the womb of the tree of the world view, or whatever, you know, whatever kind of stuff they talk about. But, you know, it's just like any religion, it's all just metaphor for life lessons. It's actually standing up pretty good on its own, but if I put oh, maybe I could make the elevator out of this, right? Here's a perfect example of why modern movie making is not satisfying. I mean, really, you're just watching, it's like a, you know, it's like a theme park. You're just watching, it's like the Waterworld Stunt Show Spectacular at Universal. Here's a good example, like how movies also don't really have any sort of like absolution anymore. So if you think about religion, you know, it's like, oh, I've done bad things, I've had immoral thoughts, I've stolen, I've cheated on my taxes, blah, blah, blah. I need to absolve for my sins, right? And so it's like, oh, look, I'll get religion or something, right? And you kind of see that with movies too. Like there's, you know, the character goes through a journey, but then in the end they're rewarded, right? But now, like if they made like Shawshank Redemption now, right? It would end the same way. Like Andy Dufresne in Red would be on the beach in Mexico, but then there'd be an after credits scene, and you'd see the evil warden, and he'd be under the same tree, and for some reason the instruction book was left there by Red, and then the evil warden would pick up the instructions of where they escaped to, and then he would turn to the camera and smile, and then the movie wouldn't be satisfying because, you know, you watch the movie as is, and you're like, oh, you know, Andy Dufresne and to a lesser extent Red went through all these challenges, but, you know, they took actions to rise above the challenge, and they learned as characters during the challenge, right? So it's satisfying because, well, you know, like he even says, like, you know, whatever sins I've committed in life, I've more than paid for. And so there's like a release, there's a catharsis or an absolution where it's like, oh, you see, like things can be good in the end. And you don't really get that anymore. You don't get happy endings. You don't even get endings. Oh, what's another way you could ruin a classic movie with a modern twist? Oh, I got it. Back to the Future 3. So they go back home, and Doc Brown shows up with the train time-traveling machine, which doesn't really make any sense, but whatever. And he's like, your future is whatever you make it, so make it a good one. And so, but then there's an after-credits scene where Biff Tannen in the 1980s, he pulls up with his, you know, his detail company truck, and then he sees all the wreckage of the DeLorean. He picks it up, and then he puts one piece to another piece. Oh no, he's gonna build a DeLorean, right? So again, it's like, oh no, it's not over, it's never over, and that's not satisfying. You know, I actually thought about Gremlins 2 a lot after I saw The Last Jedi. Oh crap, I only have one more of these. And in The Last Jedi, they didn't write, there's an obstacle character, that was the Laura Dern character, Holdo. She's an obstacle character, but she's like really badly written, right? And it made me think of Gremlins 2. So, I mean, if you haven't seen Gremlins 2, first of all, you should. It's awesome. The plot of Gremlins 2 is the kid and Phoebe Cates move to New York, right? And so they want a job in the big city. And they both work for this guy, the Trump Ted Turner amalgam. Daniel Clamp is his name. I think it's Daniel Clamp. So they both work for this guy. So it's like, oh, we want to succeed in the big city, but it's hard, blah, blah, blah. And they get a tiny apartment. So there's this, you know, there's like this very modern skyscraper, and it's Clamp Tower, I think. And so there's this guy, the CEO, and his name is Clamp, right? And so, you know, he's like, oh, I'm the, you know, he's like, it was a very typical, well, the movie is 1990, but, you know, very typical 80s yuppie type, you know? He's like, oh, I've got the most technologically advanced building ever. And then, of course, Gremlins get into it. There's this character, I think he's like, what's the kid's name? Billy? He's like Billy's boss, right? So he's an obstacle character. So he's like the mid-level boss, and he's always like, you know, he doesn't believe Billy. He's like, oh, there's no gremlins in this building. That can't be. This building's too advanced. Blah blah blah. You know, he's kind of like, he's always just like doubting everything. So he's an obstacle character, right? He isn't the villain. He just gets in the way of what the hero was trying to accomplish, right? Whoa, that's what Holdo should have been in The Last Jedi. But a lot of things just don't work about her character. Like, for one thing, the obstacle character in any movie, at some point they learn they are wrong and then they help the hero, right? That doesn't happen. Like, Holdo wasn't wrong and she doesn't really help the hero. So, I mean, a good example, what's that movie? Weird Science, right? So Bill Paxton is the obstacle character. So, you know, he's, you know, being mean to his brother. The obstacle character always must either be redeemed or humiliated. You don't necessarily kill them, but you humiliate them, right? So the reason I brought Gremlins 2 up is so anyway, there's like this mid-level boss, and he's always being mean to the protagonist, Billy. And then his comeuppance for being wrong, it's like, oh, I guess there really are gremlins in this film. His comeuppance is like, I think he ends up getting married to like this sexy female gremlin, because the gremlins in that movie are crazy. If you've ever seen the Key and Peele sketch about that. But, you know, basically, so he's wrong and he is humiliated. Or in Weird Science, you know, Bill Paxton is wrong to be mean to his brother and he's humiliated by being turned into a big blob of crap. Another example, Aliens. Aliens has 2 obstacle characters. There's Lieutenant Gorman, and then there's Burke, played by what's-his-face? Mad About You Man. So, again, you know, both of them are like, oh, you know, the company can do this, blah, blah, blah. The military can do this, and they're both wrong. But Gorman's a bad character, so he is murdered for his beliefs. Whereas Gorman, he has like a heroic, you know, explosion death with Vasquez, you know, that helps the others get away. So the obstacle character, they always have to start out the movie not agreeing with the hero, right? I don't like you, Poe. I am an obstacle, and she's an obstacle to everything he tries to do in The Last Jedi. So the obstacle character always has to disagree with the protagonist, and here's the important thing, the obstacle character always has to be wrong, right? So, but then what happens after that depends on if the character wants to change or not, okay? Example, in Gremlins 2, there are basically like 2 obstacle characters. There's the mid-level boss, and then there's Mr. Clamp himself, right? So the mid-level boss, you know, doesn't believe that there's gremlins. You know, he's giving the hero a hard time. So he disagrees with the hero, but he also doesn't change his point of view through the events of the movie, right? So because he doesn't change his points of view, he is punished or humiliated. You know, that is his punishment for non-belief. Now we don't have enough of these pieces either. Don't worry, I have a plan, Arthur. Okay, so there's 2 obstacle characters in Gremlins 2. There's the mid-level boss and Mr. Clamp. At the beginning, neither of them think the gremlins are a problem, right? They both disagree with the main character. But as the movie progresses, Clamp, the Ted Turner Trump type, he realizes that Billy is right, and then he becomes an active participant in solving the crisis of the movie. And he actually turns out to be a pretty cool character. So, you know, it's kind of like subverts your expectations. You expect the CEO in a movie like that to be incompetent, but he actually is pretty competent. Whereas the other character, the mid-level boss, he doesn't change his opinion. He just continues to be wrong, and therefore he is punished. So I'm going to have to use 2 short ones and 2 long ones. If we contrast that with Last Jedi, so you have the Holdo character, and she's like, I do not agree with you, Poe. You know, you have to listen to me. And Poe's like, I think you are doing the wrong thing, Holdo. So she starts out the movie not agreeing with, well, not really the hero, but one of the main characters. And the thing about it that doesn't work is, it's like she's not wrong. Apparently her strategy was correct, but that's not how you make a obstacle character. It's not satisfying that way, and that's why that character didn't work, was because they didn't follow the rules of obstacle characters. So it's basically obstacle character doesn't agree with the hero, but the obstacle character for one is always wrong, so that was a problem with Holdo. Secondly, obstacle character, they either learn they are wrong and change their ways and are redeemed, or they refuse to change and are punished. And redemption can also lead to death. Actually, one of the best obstacle characters in modern films, I would say, in Minority Report, there's the Colin Firth character, or whatever that guy's name is. He's trying to, he wants to, take Tom Cruise's job predicting crime. But as the movie progresses, he learns, oh, Tom Cruise is correct. He was framed. And in his case, he ends up getting killed for what he learned. So he kind of has the heroic obstacle character death. Holdo is a badly written obstacle character. And even if you don't really realize, if you're like, oh, I don't like this character, and you don't know why, it's because subconsciously she's an obstacle character, but they don't follow any of the obstacle character rules. And I guess they're subverting expectations, but, things work for a reason. I mean, what would have actually worked a lot better was, if she's like a stubborn character and she's like, no, I do not want to do this. And then she realizes, oh, I was wrong. And then she sacrifices herself with the holdo remover. Holdo remover? Well, a holdo remover would have been handy in that movie. But no, she sacrifices herself doing the holdo maneuver. And that would have worked because it's like, I'm an obstacle character. I was wrong. I learned that I was wrong, but I have to pay a penance for that. So I will sacrifice myself so others might live. See, that would have worked. But again, it felt hollow because they didn't follow that formula. But Gremlins is a good example because, as I mentioned, it has both kinds of obstacle characters, and their stories are resolved in two different ways. Basically because one chooses to change their point of view and the other one doesn't. Once I built a tower up to the sky, brother, can you spare a dime? Working the high steel, I'm gonna fight Darkman. I thought Rise of Skywalker was a laughable mess of a movie. It's like, wow, this is awful. It was so bad. He's a really good director. I wish he'd have better scripts. Like Spielberg. Spielberg only ever wrote 2 of his own scripts, and they were still good scripts. It's so dumb. It's like she's got that dagger, and the dagger somehow lines up to wreckage in an ocean. First of all, the throne room was on an outside surface of the Death Star, which means as it entered the atmosphere, it would be burned up first, right? So, first of all, it wouldn't even be there. But then it's wreckage that's been in the ocean for 30 years? It's like wreckage in the ocean wouldn't look the same after 30 days. It's an ocean. But the one thing I did like was when the Force Ghost Luke pulls the X-Wing out of the water on the Porg Island, because it's like, yes, that should have happened in The Last Jedi. It was even set up. It's like, oh, look, there's this X-Wing underwater. And so we didn't see Luke pull the X-Wing out of the swamp in Empire Strikes Back. So having him, oh, look, he can effortlessly do this now, that would have been satisfying. But no. Can't have satisfaction when you can have subverted expectations. I mean, really, that's the thing that the number one thing they screwed up on with that sequel trilogy is you never get to see Luke Skywalker kick butt, right? Like, Rogue One isn't a very good movie, but it had that scene where Darth Vader kicked butt, and everyone loved it. That was the critical error that the sequel trilogy made. Check it out. There's like a little pulley thing. I guess I could use that. Just put it it's not perfectly centered, though. Of course, the pulley doesn't need to be perfectly centered because it's the side of the pulley that matters, not the center of it. So I could probably mount it there and have a pretty good straight shot. Yeah, that will probably work. Let's see. How can I attach this between there? Got a bevy of rods here. Tonight on Modern Marvels, how it's made. I also need to transfer the load that way. I wonder if I could use... And there's like this hook thing. I could actually use this here and then have this here to basically keep the load wire out of the elevator chamber. All right, Screw, you're doing double duty. Triple duty, I guess. That's my rule with these videos. Zilcho production values. Okay, I've got a rule for myself. I'm only going to bend pieces that have already been bent. Oh, yeah, it's perfectly lined up. I mean, I closed that blind. blind that uses a mooring cleat for the cable tie. I spent 5 minutes looking for string and I gave up. I think the string that I did have, I used it to pull conduit or pull wires through conduit. So I'm just going to use fishing line. Can't really see it, so it's going to look like this is being lifted by magic. There was a lot of monofilament. That's what you call fishing line when it's being used in a movie. It magically becomes monofilament. Our elevator kept failing. How did you fix it? We made the structure less secure. Loving an elevator, living it up when I'm going down. I wonder if I remove these pieces, I could put like a cross support in and basically keep it level the whole way up, or at least not rotating. Yeah, one thing I would do a lot as a kid, which I don't want to do here, is bend the pieces. Okay, now I just got to figure out how to power this. I'm not going to use 3D printers. I will only use the contents of this box. A box of scraps, if you will. Wire nut terminals remind me of those dry cells that we used in grade school. Maybe that's Gen X's secret weapon, besides hard work. It's that we're old enough to remember how things used to work. Okay, so we need to link this to a take-up spool. This actually does have take-up spools on it, although I noticed this rod is actually backwards of where it should be. Was it just built wrong? Just built on a Friday back in like 1964. You know, I don't think I can take that thing apart without busting it, so I think I'm gonna have to make my own take-up spool for now. I got these things. How many of these linkages do I have? 2? Not very many. I lost the set screws for this one. Oh, I could tie the fishing line around these screws. That would be handy. Sure, I could have been king. But in my own way, I am king. Hail to the king, baby. Oh, I'm so glad Max finally saw that. Now he knows all the classic lines. I may be bad, but I feel good. I actually ran into a viewer of this YouTube channel at Menards. I believe his name was Eric. Like, far and away, the place I get recognized the most in real life, not like, you know, like conventions and stuff, it's always Menards. I don't know why. Well, anyway, yeah, he was working on a robot that played guitars, so he showed me some of his photos and it looked pretty cool. So I wish him luck with that project. We did a video like that long ago on the show, so it's pretty neat stuff. Thanks, Gravity. Wait a minute. This'll look cooler. Too hot to handle, too cold to hold. Called Ghostbusters and the Hat Control. Had him throwing a party for a bunch of children while all the wild slime was under the building. So they packed up the big proton packs in the back and they split. Forgot about Vigo, Master Evil, trying to mess with my boys? It ain't legal. Whoa, wee-oh, you know it. Okay, so here's the take-up wheel. What I'm going to do is I'm going to attach a pulley and line it up with that other pulley and have a squeaky chair as well. And then hopefully I can transfer power. All right. Is it going to work? Okay, engineering geniuses, why is it moving so slow? I'm sure some of you know the answer. That's right, the diameter of the shaft is too small. In a system such as this diameter actually acts as a gear in a way. The eagle has landed. So all I'll do is I'll take a couple of these long screws. Looks like they're still size 8. So it'll wind in a triangle, but it's still going to be a lot more circumference than the center shaft. I just realized something else. I'm spreading out these bolts to make a wider diameter. Will probably also require more torque. Oh, wrong way. Yeah, here it's struggling. So we're just gonna have to go back with slow and steady to win the race. I mean, yeah, I can just feel it with my fingers. It takes far less force. So we're moving slower, but we're going further. So we had it right the first time. All aboard. Yeah, this is a really slow elevator. Living it up while I'm going down. Oh no, our belt's slipping. Uh-oh, elevator party. People are going onto the elevator. I'm not really a fan of elevator parties. They clog up the elevators. I guess if you're the one who's partying, then it's okay. We made it! Now I guess the question is, can we have a controlled descent? The only thing saving you from certain doom is holding torque. Ah, I want to get off! Ah, they were crushed. Everyone arrives safely at their destination. Well, there you go, an unboxing of a 1964 vintage Erector Set. We looked at all the parts. We got one of the gearboxes or motor boxes working again, and we built something. A very crude elevator. Well, hope you enjoyed that video. I think I might I might keep the box, but the set itself, I might actually give it to Allison because her son is really into building things, and he's like, I think he's almost 4, and maybe in a couple years this would be a good thing for him to have. He's probably a little too young for it right now. But yeah, so there you go. Erector Set fun. #Boomer Toys. I'm going to put that in the tags below.